like ghosty.
Perfect. Hi, Ghosty fam. Welcome to the Activity Continues podcast. I'm Amy, and my co-hosts, Megan and Amy, AP, and I are soul sisters who usually recap episodes of the TV show The Dead Files. But since they're on break, we are sharing some new and fun things with you. Some weeks it's listener stories, and some weeks we interview interesting people. This is one of those weeks. Megan, would you like to introduce our guest today?
I sure would, Amy. Today we are talking to Lisha, who's also known as the Scarlet and Gray Witch. She is one of our earliest and most super active patrons, and she's agreed graciously to speak with us today. We are so excited to speak with her. She has been a practicing pagan and green witch for over 40 years. She has experience with everything from mirror scrying and divination to crystals and herbalism, not herbalism.
Not herbalism.
No, not herbalism. No, although that is legal now in Minnesota. She's also been reading tarot cards since she was a teenager, but primarily uses the cards for creative writing and artistic guidance. Her formal education ranges from degrees in psychology and zoology to English literature and creative writing. She is an alumni of the Ohio State University, Northern Arizona University, and Yavapai College. And I hope I'm saying that right.
I Googled it. It's Yavapai.
Yavapai. Oh, good. She's also had paranormal experiences throughout her life, many during the almost 20 years she lived in Flagstaff, which, if you remember, was the season 14 season finale show where they did Flagstaff. Lots of stuff going on there. And 3 near-death experiences following a fatal car accident. So we have a lot to talk about with Lisha. So I'm turning it over to AP for some content warnings.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. While we don't know what's fully going to be discussed, we will be discussing some Wicca, paganism, tarot. So if you're Amy's mom, stop now. And I'm guessing Amy L's mom, because mine will just... She's a nurse, so she's heard it all.
She don't care. My mom just thinks everything is evil. She thinks everything is the devil. So, yeah, she wouldn't be listening anyway. She doesn't listen to our show anyway, which is good. So I can swear.
My mom is, I told her I'm kind of exploring Wicca. And so I've actually been talking to Lisha, and she's been just a wealth of knowledge.
Good.
And
good.
So, I love it because she tells me information, but she doesn't sway me one way or another. She's like, this is where I started with. These are some authors. You can do whatever feels comfortable for you, but just give me the background. And I told my mom that, and I told a friend, and they're scared for my soul.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I've told them, like, I still believe, like, I still have faith. I'm just looking if religion and church is the best way to explore that. So, like, that's not in question.
Right.
And they're like, I'm just scared for your soul.
Yeah. That's how my
friend's
mom is
like,
too.
is this the devil tempting you? And I'm like, okay, but like, still believing.
That's
what are you not getting?
Because that's what Christians are taught to believe.
I know.
That's what my mom and that side of the family does too. That's why I just don't even talk about it with them. They don't need to know.
I mean, Megan, honestly, if you enjoy reading, I would highly, highly, highly recommend Bernard Cornwell's The Last Kingdom series.
Okay.
That was the Netflix show is based off of it. The books are so much better. There's 13
always
books. But content warning, there are at least, I mean, there's lots of battles and everything, but there's 2 explicit kind of talked about animal sacrifices, because that's what you did. Even Christians did back in the day. But it was really interesting to me to read through that and see a lot of Viking was a job. So Viking wasn't a people, it was more of the job. But the Norse and, the Northmen and all that sort of stuff, and the Danes as they came through, and their belief system with the old gods, which most of our days of the week are based off of those gods. Odin's Day, Wednesday, Thor's Day, Freya's Day. It's just really interesting to see from that historical perspective. So it's historical fiction, but it does tie in. The main character mirrors the external battle of Christianity and paganism with the internal battle, because he's born Christian, raised that way to about the age of 10, but was also brought up knowing the old gods.
Mm-hmm.
And then sees himself as, worshiping Thor and Odin,
Okay.
but fights for the Christians.
Yeah, interesting.
It to me, it was really eye-opening through a lot of stuff.
That sounds really interesting. Yeah.
And what's his name again, Amy?
Bernard Cornwell.
Okay.
Yep. And the series is The Last Kingdom. So the first book is The Last Kingdom.
I feel like I read that a long time ago, probably when I should not have been reading it because I didn't understand it.
Maybe a little bit of it stuck with you, and that's why you're
the main character is Uhtred. So, and that was a time when, like, if your first son died, if it was a family name, you gave your second son that name. And yep. So it's set during the 800s, 900s, somewhere in that time frame.
Yeah, but I'm like, one thing that really resonated with Lisha, and we can talk about this again, but she said it's all about balance, like, which is so interesting to me because if you think about it, like, everything has balance, the sun and the moon and feminine, masculine. And so I just thought that was really, really interesting. And, if I'm getting theological about it, if Christian God encompasses everything, then wouldn't the Christian God also encompass a feminine and masculine, a god and a goddess? And if you do worship the god and the goddess with the belief of an overhead, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just so, really, and I don't, in my opinion, religion shouldn't be, or faith shouldn't be like a linear journey. Like, you shouldn't just accept things as they are, because that's what leads to burning all the witches and so I don't know, it's just been a really interesting week and I've had to deal with that. But Lisha's been, I mean, she's so great and she answers questions, but she doesn't answer my questions in a leading way. It's just very much, this is what I know, this is what my experience is. But she even said, like, if you want to look up more like Scottish Wicca, then that's what you can do. And it's just, if you want to look into covens, you can do that. And so I like the feminist energy behind it because, God is a theoretical, historically a man, and I don't like that, but I feel like God shouldn't be anything. God just is masculine, feminine, nothing, but patriarchy and all that. Sorry, I didn't mean to get deep.
No, that's fine.
And I have my paranormal.
No, paranormal. I know how that
paranormal.
Paranormal. Paranormal.
That's the most amazing thing.
I can spell.
I know you can. Who's my smart girl?
Yeah, it's me.
I just love.
I think that we're all drunk right now.
I know. I feel like,
and we're not.
I poured a glass of wine last night, and then I didn't drink it. I just left it on the counter, and then I'm like, well, when I went to bed, I put it in the fridge because I do that sometimes, thinking I'll drink it later.
I do that too.
And so I saw it in there today, and I'm like, maybe I should just grab that right for now.
Did you?
No, I just have water. I'm gonna go get my wine.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Now I feel jealous. I don't need wine. I don't need wine.
It's not about need, Amy. It's about want.
Don't tempt me.
I know, I'm the worst.
Because I know I have a bottle of rosé in the fridge.
Ooh, that does sound good. That does sound good.
She's here.
There you go.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, I was very thirsty. So
yeah, I went to go get wine. Amy went to go get wine. But anyway, glad you're here.
Yes, welcome.
So nice to finally meet you.
It's nice to finally meet you guys too.
Thank
Just
you.
ignore how horrible I look.
Oh, stop. You look fine. I love your background.
I'm ghost-like.
and I think it's like a cold or something because now I have this horrible cough. So
Oh
I love
no.
try
your
to warn you
backdrop, by
before I
the way.
cough.
It's
Yeah,
giving
that-
me like Fae
the backdrop.
vibes behind
fact,
you.
It's really pretty.
I love it.
Oh, the lights.
Mm-hmm.
Woo! We're having a rave. I didn't turn my lights on. They're
Oh, we
packed
need
in a
some
box
techno
somewhere.
music.
Yeah. So we did we read part of your bio that you created for us today with info about your background and everything. So sounds like we have a lot of fun things to talk to you about. We did talk a little about how Megan is interested in Wicca and that you've been kind of helping her with some ideas and things to think about and look at and stuff like that. So she's
and
said you've been very helpful.
Yes, and I love it because you will like answer the questions that I have and provide the knowledge, but you're not like pushing me in, one way or the other. It's just, this is my experience. This is what's helped me, but feel free to explore, how you want. So I really appreciate that.
I think something that's really important for anyone to remember is that curiosity doesn't mean you want to convert, So unlike, if you tell a Mormon, oh, I'm curious about your church, and then they show up at your house 90 times.
Yes.
Like, when you're talking about like an alternative religion like Wicca or paganism, you can just do a lot of research and it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that that's what you're going to believe. It just means that you're gaining knowledge.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I tell people because a couple of friends are like worried for my soul, quote unquote. And I'm like, okay, but even if I decide to not go with Wicca, like I'm still learning. Like,
exactly.
how is that not good to learn about, new religions and new beliefs? And even if you don't go with them, like, I lived in the Middle East and I talked to all my friends there about Islam and what their beliefs were. And, I questioned it and I didn't convert, but it's a good knowledge to have. Like,
absolutely.
I don't understand why they're so, well, I do understand why people are afraid of knowledge.
It's because that's how they're taught. Yeah. My family, it doesn't believe that. Well, they believe that I'm a heathen because I went to college and that's what ruined my brain.
Sure.
Because I went to college and I learned too much. And my one cousin actually said, well, I heard that college teaches you to shun God and Jesus and all that. And I'm like, okay, I didn't learn any of that in college. That just came to me.
Well, Lisha, then you'll be
of Liberty University.
Well, Lisha, I appreciate how Megan said that you just are able to answer some of the questions without judgment and without that kind of thing. I think when it's so many aspects of our lives with so many things, people tell us that we should do this and we should do that and you should cut this out and you should do this, and people judge you for so many things. Like I trying to keep, I have a deer head on the wall over here, and I was like, ooh, I should probably try to make sure that people don't see that because I grew up hunting, and we eat the meat.
You live in Minnesota, so yeah.
I mean,
where are you at, Lisha? Are you Arizona?
I'm in Arizona now.
Arizona. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So. And one thing I liked that, you had said is that it's all about balance, which I think is so interesting. And, Christianity in so far as I know, it's, more about like God tells you what to do and you do it and you support him and you believe in him and you trust him. Also, why is it a him? Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
But, you had mentioned that Wicca.
Because it was made up by man.
I know. And am I saying it right? The actual religion is Wicca? Okay. And so Wicca was all about balance. And I just love that, and like you had said, everything has balance and that's just resonated with me so much. So again, I really appreciate you taking the time to explain it to me.
As a room full of Libras, we also really like balance.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the thumb and the finger thing too, because not every Wiccan is a witch, but pretty much every witch is some type of Wiccan. And just because you're Wiccan doesn't mean that you do magic, which is essentially why it's called witchcraft, because there's a craft to it. So Wiccan in its own is just a religion that involves a goddess. For some people, a little bit too much, but it should be pretty even. But
Yeah.
But you get it. You'll meet a lot of Wiccans that are just kind of having this knee-jerk reaction to growing up Catholic or having like having the patriarchal attitudes forced upon them. So they do this really hardcore 180.
Like a shift, yeah.
And seem to completely forget that a female can't really give birth to anything without a guy either.
Right.
Not just the other way around.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I think just like anything, there's the way there's different sects of Christianity, there's different attitudes in Islam, in Judaism, and in any religion, there's just different people. And it's always going to be important to kind of gauge the people you're dealing with and what they have to tell you or what they have to teach you.
Yeah.
Is really important,
I love
it. If you just kind of blindly go, start hanging out with a bunch of women in a coven that we're Wicca, but, we don't care about the gods. We just care about the goddess. And you're still not really learning everything you're supposed to.
Right.
And Wicca is tricky because people try to say, oh, it's based on like this ancient, it's this connection with our ancestors and so on. When in reality, there really wasn't Wicca before Gerald Gardner. So
yeah, that's what you had mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that wasn't that long ago, was it?
No, it was like the 1930s, 40s. It wasn't legal in England, or it wasn't. This is interesting. Like, it was still illegal in England to be a witch or so on up until, I want to say 1952, but that might not be right. But one of the people that championed reversing that law, of all people, was Winston Churchill.
Oh,
yeah.
Found that so odd.
Yeah.
Because like you picture him as this kind of warmongering, big blustery guy. And, but they actually, there was a medium in England who, during the Second World War, and she got a little too much information correct about a ship that had sunk, but they hadn't alerted like the families or anything to the fact that it happened. So, the government's thought is like, either way, she's giving away too much knowledge. So she's either a spy or, she's doing something illegal, or she's passing on information that's classified to every Tom, Dick, and Harry that will pay to see her perform. And they actually arrested her, but the only thing they could really try her under was the Witchcraft Act. So I think, if I remember correctly, she was the last person in England to be tried as a witch and found guilty. I think she spent like 9 or 10 months at least in jail for that.
Wow.
But
what was her name again?
She wasn't practicing witchcraft. She wasn't even like a pagan. She was just a medium.
Did you say her name? Or what do we know her name?
Off the top of my head.
Oh,
I cannot
okay.
remember it.
No problem. Sorry.
I want to say Mary.
Yep, Amy will look it up.
Yeah, I want to say Mary something, but I don't.
So
she's pretty famous.
So Lisha, when we had
easy to find out.
When we had chatted, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
She wasn't. It just kind of shows. I think it just shows like the broad scope that they've always been willing to persecute, essentially women for the most part. Under
what a shock
when it comes to having the witchcraft laws, because she wasn't even a pagan. She was a Christian. So
was it Helen Duncan?
Oh, that's it, Helen Duncan.
So
I don't know why I was Mary.
That was starting to sound really familiar. Our friends over at Generally Spooky, during one of their now Generally Spooky History, one of their mini in between seasons, they did, I think between season 1 and 2, they did a witchcraft set, and they have a whole episode on Helen Duncan.
Good. Oh, I'll have to look that up.
So she died December 6th of 1956 in Edinburgh.
Did she die because of imprisonment?
Well,
I don't even think she was in prison until the end of the war.
She was the one famous for producing ectoplasm made from cheesecloth.
Yeah, there's a few of those.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just whether or not she was a genuine medium or somebody that had connections to information that people weren't really supposed to have connections to. Of course, is always going to be up for debate. But, I mean, I'm kind of like picturing Cindy Kaza or Amy Allen, like going into a residence, like to do a reading and all of a sudden like pulling ectoplasm out of their mouth. And it's just like, you begin to see like, how could that not have been ridiculous on all levels? But
right. I know. And that's why we did an episode where M talked about, I mean, they have 350 episodes, so I don't know which one it was, but she was, they were talking about how this one medium was pulling ectoplasm out of her hoo-ha. So yeah, they do really, really good research, and I can't remember the episode, but yeah, they were talking about it, and I'm like, that. But
spiritualism's just so funny, like the things people would do. And of course, it started with the Fox sisters in Hydesville, New York.
Oh, yeah.
And I think what's interesting is that later in life, one of the Fox sisters admitted that like they were supposedly just like cracking their toe joints and stuff, which they wouldn't have been the only people to supposedly do that. But then there's testimony of like the rapping going on in their house when they weren't even there. So you're kind of like, okay, so that only covers like 70% of it. What was going on the rest of the time?
And maybe, and doing
plus,
that.
How does somebody crack their toe joints or any joint for that matter?
I mean,
loud enough for the people in the back of a giant auditorium to hear it.
My sister's ankles crack. Like she can just sit there and move her foot like this, and you will hear. Like I can always tell when she's walking up behind me or anything like that. I could tell her run
like that too.
And it's you can hear this quite.
But I still don't think it's loud enough that people in a 500,000 seat auditorium can hear me without a microphone.
No.
So and then she retracted her confession or initial retraction of her abilities. She retracted that, and so but it was kind of like once the ball got out of the court, it just kept going. And spiritualism is an interesting history in and of itself.
It is.
It really is.
Yeah, and I think it has done a total episode on that too. It might have been tied in with the witchcraft, but they've got some really good episodes that I love listening to. But so Lisha, you had mentioned that you kind of started, when you were 10 or 11, kind of exploring Wicca. How did that kind of come about, and how did you progress into the different avenues of Wicca and, crystals and tarot?
When all my friends like had pictures of David Cassidy and those kind of people like up on their walls, I listened to Led Zeppelin. And Rush, but Led Zeppelin, I read an older interview, and they just talking about like they sold their soul, and Jimmy Page lives in Aleister Crowley's house, and I just remember it was like Aleister Crowley this, Aleister Crowley that, and I was like, who's Aleister Crowley? I'm like 9 years old, and I'm going to the library like, who's Aleister Crowley? Can you point me in the right direction to the
Oh my God, the librarian.
I'm sure the librarian was like, what?
But by then,
here's Mary had a little lamb instead.
The ladies at the library there kind of came to expect weird things from this little girl because I'd already been reading about ghosts and stuff for like years. So it was like, but yeah, I started learning about who Aleister Crowley was, and it just happened. Like, I think I told Megan this, that when it was still the Dewey Decimal System, I don't know with nonfiction if it's still that way, but all the books on the occult and spirituality and that kind of stuff, they're all like 131.9, 131 to 132 in there. And I just kind of grabbed this book by Starhawk off the shelf. And while I was looking for more stuff about like what is Kabbalah? Am I even pronouncing that right? Not being Jewish, and being like super young. And I just pulled the book off the shelf and I started reading, and it was like something in me just clicked. But I think one thing that's really interesting too is like, I've known a lot. Yeah, I'm old. So I've known a lot of pagans and witches and Wiccans through the years. And people have always been really surprised to find out that that's what I practice. And I think the thing is that I don't go put it out there like, hi, I'm Lisha, I'm a witch. It's like, I don't, I don't really talk to people like that's not the first thing that comes out of my mouth. And it's not, I just kind of dress like a normal hippie person. And, so I think people like, there's so many stereotypes. And that's why it's important for people to learn what the truth is, to like gain
100%.
information, because a lot of hatred and so much fear is just based on people not knowing, and I think like when I was a lot younger, if I would have run around saying, I'm going to be a Wiccan, and then people found out what that was, like there's several people's heads that would have exploded.
Yeah, for sure.
Like what Megan's experiencing right now with her family and friends.
But they just, people were used to me reading weird books. I mean, like, I even like would sit down and read the Bible through from front to back a couple times as a kid, just like, what is everybody talking about? And then it's like, so now when I hear like so many things that Christians, like different preachers and stuff have to say, it's like, you do realize that was never in the Bible. Like
they don't.
It was just their interpretation.
Yeah, like, like I was listening or watching something about that Hillsong guy and him talking about God wants you to be rich.
Says who?
I believe in the Bible. It specifically says they don't want you to be rich. So it's like, it's amazing how they've managed to turn things around to fit what
their
they
narrative.
Want. And that's just a dangerous thing. And I think that's what happens when you have a lot of Christians who don't just read the Bible.
Right.
Or they only read the sections they're told to. And
And that's
they're told how to interpret them.
Fear is just blindly following is what leads you to burn all the witches. And, what leads you to enslave people of another color, because the Bible said Cain marked Abel. And now there are people in the South who believe that that's where people of color came from. When
I know, and I don't believe it was like Cain marked Abel and made his skin black.
Right. No, that's not what it says.
So
how is that even possible?
It's like the way that like, they'll take a small thing, in the part of the Bible where it talks about thou shall not suffer a witch to live. First of all, it's a mistranslation. Second of all, it's in the same set of rules where you're not supposed to be eating shellfish and pork.
Yep.
So if you're going to sit there and peel some shrimp and then eat a bacon cheeseburger, how are you taking this one line so literally and ignoring everything else?
That's right.
You're only supposed to eat animals that chew the cud and have cloven hooves, and you're only supposed to eat animals in the ocean that have fins and scales. So there goes all of your shrimp, your mussels, your, all of that is gone. But I get it.
Yeah.
I tried reading the Bible. Life. I made it to like Numbers or Deuteronomy, and I'm like, this is so boring.
I couldn't. I've never gotten through it. It's
Oh
too
my
boring.
God.
It's in the King James version, like these arguments that like fundamentalists have and stuff, where some of them hate each other because they believe that the King James version is perfect. And it's like, can you please explain to me how that could possibly be when it's named the King James version because James was the one who had it translated?
And how many thousands of years after Jesus was King James around?
And how many times was the text translated before they even got a hold of the copy that was translated?
And how many times was it just story told down by story down by story before
it's a game of telephone?
It is the world's oldest game of telephone.
But that's how all, when you look at whether you want to call it religion or culture or anything, it was all spoken word before it was ever written down, before it was ever fully taken care of, because at different points it could have been like, we thought it was lost, but oh look, we found it. It's right here. We have it.
Yeah.
Right. And there's just so much out there for people to explore and get a better understanding of what's out there and a better appreciation for everyone else.
Everything. Yeah.
I mean, we're not saying go and stand in somebody else's shoes every day, all the time, but take a break from your own perspective and to look outside of that perspective.
Yeah. So many people are afraid to do that.
They are.
I know the people in my family that are still very staunch Christians they don't want to hear anything else because their faith is actually so weak that any little thing is going to tip them over. And so they're like, la, 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 don't talk to me. I don't want to hear about it.
Well, Megan, you said something earlier when we were talking about what's considered normal. And it's, all these things that were put to the norm because of in a lot of ways, it was the threat that you had to convert to something. Or, you look at the Crusades, you look at all of those things. I mean, it was all throughout history. Whichever culture had the stronger army, had the stronger things going on, they're the ones who overtook. They won. And that's how
you see it in America nowadays with the constant, this is a Christian country. And it's like, I'm pretty sure that the founding fathers, if they wanted to say this was a Christian country, they would have made that a little more explicit.
Wouldn't they then have just stayed in England?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole reason they left was freedom of religion.
Yeah.
Like, hi, hello.
But
how are we doing?
Freedom of religion that was still along the Christian lines, Megan.
But they didn't say that. They said
they didn't think there was anything else. They didn't know there was anything else.
Well, and that's why, you look at the early Masonic symbols, which of course George Washington and pretty much everybody that started this country was a Mason of some kind.
Right. Yep.
And when you look at a lot of the early initial symbols, the way the streets of Washington, D.C. are laid out, and Masonic symbols and interpretation, it's so much of it is everything from Islamic to paganism to it's everything.
Right.
And I just don't think that stuff would exist if what they meant when they were writing the Bill of Rights was that, so you're allowed to practice any kind of Christianity you want, but only that.
Right.
In fact, if you're Catholic, we don't want you either.
Exactly. Because that's what they were fleeing from. So So Lisha, you had talked a little bit sorry, Amy.
I remember hearing this recently and I thought that this was really interesting and pertinent to our conversation. But when "In God We Trust" was added to the currency, the United States currency was not in the 1700s. It wasn't until the Civil War.
I thought it was until the 1900s.
Well, Civil War is "In God We Trust" was first added to U.S. coins at the beginning of the Civil War, but then it wasn't added to paper money until the 1950s.
Okay, yeah.
Wow.
And this is from
because one nation under God in the Pledge of Allegiance, that wasn't added until the mid 20th century. So
correct.
That tracks. So Lisha, you had mentioned, or in your bio, you talked about how you were you work with crystals, and can you kind of explain what that means, what that entails, how you use those crystals and how that kind of applies to life?
I think that first I'll start by saying that throughout my life, I've had this split personality of scientist and artist, and
I love it.
And that even reflects all the way to my college education, where half of it's in a hard science and half of it's in art, something artistic. And so sometimes it's hard for me because even when I know something is true, I can kind of be like, I just don't know, there's no scientific basis for this. And I guess just what happened was I always thought crystals are really pretty.
They are.
And I loved having them in jewelry. But, not long. It was pretty soon after I started working at Crystal Magic, which was the store that called the Dead Files and initially in Flagstaff.
Oh, we have to talk about that for sure.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
we
went
sure
over
do.
and I picked up this piece of selenite and I almost dropped it because I could literally feel the vibrations coming up my arms. And I was like,
Wow.
oh my God, this isn't all BS.
Wow.
Like you
That's
can
amazing.
like feel it, like if it's the right stone and has the right vibration to you. And a lot of that can sound really like foo-foo and stuff, but I think I just use crystals more as a fact that, well, I like them in jewelry, so that just gives me another excuse. And just to help with other magic or, just an extra layer of protection, because I think all magic can kind of be viewed not as necessarily taming and using some external force, but all ritual is in a way really just kind of honing the mind and focusing on that one aspect.
Sure.
And being able to tune out the rest for a purpose, and that kind of really applies to every religion. And I think, if you think about like, oh, I put, this jet and this tourmaline in my window for protection, it's just another idea in the back of your mind that like, well, this is protected,
Sure.
Then the same thing with herbs and stuff, I think you'll find a lot of people talking about like the initial life force or, crystals are different because they have different vibrational energy. I don't know how much I necessarily believe that, but, I think they represent the earth to a huge degree in the history of our earth, and that's important. And, herbs, they're plants. They have a life force. So I always tell people it's probably kind of easier to start if you're interested in stuff like that, looking into herbalism, because as a step in, it's a little bit easier to understand because some of it works medicinally. You know that functions and it has an effect on the human body or the human mind. And so that can be an easier way to go to start with. I think with crystals, you have to really kind of find that one crystal, and you're only going to be able to do it by touching them, which sounds like really invasive, like you're going in and touching the oranges, but it's true.
Well, at least you're not licking the halite like the students I used to teach did. It's salty. Halite is salt.
But I think that, there's like all these different theories, like carrying vibration from the earth, the idea that quartz contains electrical signals, which, I mean, when you think about the stone tape theory, that's kind of where they're coming from with that. And so basically trying to say that every type of crystal is going to contain like some type of energy like that. I don't know how much I believe all of that, but I do believe that when you have a physical representation, sympathetic magic of what you want on spiritually, your desire spiritually, like I want to protect my window from bad energy coming into my house, so I'm going to put this piece of jet in the window. It's a physical representation that allows you to focus more on it.
Okay.
And you could there's so many different ways to do that. Different covens do things differently. I've never been a joiner.
Hey, you joined our Patreon.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't think I've ever been really comfortable around covens. I mean, I definitely I remember the first people I came across. I grew up outside Columbus in Columbus, Ohio. And the first kind of people I came across, they were hardcore Gardnerian witches, which means you practice skyclad, in other words, nude, and I was like, well, okay, no.
That's a no for me.
Yeah.
I don't really know if I'm going to take my shoes off when I'm outside. So that's not going to
I would do that,
You
and then
know.
they'd be like, "We're gonna need you to not come back. Actually, we're drawing the line.
We've just changed our
thing
whole
is that
idea."
Yeah,
as you
we
start
changed
to
our
learn
policy.
like the history of Wicca, you learn that long before like Gerald Gardner got into quote witchcraft, like he tells this entire elaborate story where he was like blindfolded and taken to somebody's house, and oh my God, there's still witches in England, and like he was initiated into their, their coven. And I don't think anybody full on believes like a lot of the crap he said was true. And like, I think I mentioned it to Megan, but there's this English scholar, Ronald Hutton, and he's wrote a ton of books, about female goddess stuff that all through history, and Wiccans and witchcraft and paganism. He's a professor in medieval paganism. Now, if I'd have known I could have done that, I
Yeah.
would have been much happier. But yeah, it's funny because I think he's kind of a fan of Gerald Gardner's. He seems that way in the documentary he did. But even he's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. You'll see people that are so hard. This one guy he goes to meet has one of Gerald Gardner's original books of shadows, one of his original grimoires that he wrote in and that he started Wicca with. And it's actually kept in a safe deposit bank box in this like super secure bank because it's worth over $1 million.
Wow.
But you think about it, it is the only, it doesn't matter if you're talking about the Brits or a good part of Europe or North America. It's really kind of the only religion started by a white person, So
yeah, that's
full on started.
interesting.
So,
Wow.
I mean,
Did not think
it's the
about
only
that.
thing that that's why they kind of view Wicca. They'll say it's like the only religion that ever began in Britain, that it's wholly British. And yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah.
And though people want to have this tie to like this ancestral paganism and so forth, no archaeologist is ever going to know what, without time travel and a really good ability at like, far off languages, what anybody was doing when they built Stonehenge.
Right.
It's always going to be a guess. And it's like that with all the ceremonies, whether, you look at the big white horse in the ground on the hill that I just flaked over remembering the name, or Stonehenge, or, there's stone circles everywhere through France, Germany, etc. We're just never going to know what really was going on. But I think people want something that ties in with their history and ties in with their ancestry. And I guess a lot of them felt that Wicca and paganism kind of offers that. But I think that's the one misleading direction that a lot of people go to.
Sure.
It's this idea that, whereas if we were really in touch with what our ancestors were doing when they were Celtic, we'd be sacrificing people.
Right.
Lots of religions sacrifice.
I don't know how in touch maybe we should be, and just be happy that we're neo-pagans and we don't need to take care of any of that stuff that way. So Gerald Gardner's an interesting case study in himself. When you look through his original Book of Shadows, you see a lot that's actually pulled from Aleister Crowley. And Aleister actually wanted for Gardner to inherit Crowley's path and Thelema. And was not overly happy when Gardner went off in this other like female-based religion, because Crowley's kind of misogynistic, to say the least. And we all know he's a heroin addict, so.
Right.
But he did make the most beautiful set of tarot cards. And that was how I got into tarot, actually, is they were painted by the Thoth deck, which is Crowley's deck. They were painted by Lady Frida Harris. And they had some of the original prints in the British Museum when I was there with my dad, and in the Tower of London. So I'd seen these prints, and they're just the coolest pictures. And just not even thinking twice about it, like just picked up the deck of cards for sale in the gift shop. And that was my first tarot deck, and I still have it. I take overly good care of my things. And so I don't know, Crowley's always going to be a touchy subject with people. He was just, I think a good part of his life. I was listening to Occult Confessions once, and I think like Rob, the professor who's like the leader of their groups, however you want to put that, he put it best when it's like, just talking about how so many like occultists are like just huge showmen, basically big extroverts, because they're trying to make money, in some way.
Right.
Crowley's trying to make a living doing this stuff. So he's basically, just putting himself out there and saying, hey, come follow me. And then I don't ever have to work a real job.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so funny, like how many things tie together, because of course, Jack Parsons was a follower of Crowley and ended up in the OTO. It's Ordo Templi, Ordianus. I don't know how you pronounce it. Lodge. That was actually by then one of the only working lodges, and it was all under Aleister Crowley. So, he's sending money to Aleister Crowley. And then ding, ding, ding at his doorbell one day, L. Ron Hubbard shows up.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
And L. Ron Hubbard, he'd like to put down like how he was friends with Aleister Crowley. And yet we actually have the physical correspondence of Jack Parsons and a couple of the other people that were in that lodge with Crowley. And from the very beginning, when they mention L. Ron and like sing his praises, Aleister hated him. He'd never even spoken to him. And, next thing you know, and it's so L. Ron Hubbard, isn't it, to lie about that?
Yeah.
What? He lied about stuff?
I know, exactly right.
There
Or to
goes
try
my
to make,
belief.
like, to take this little tiny connection and make it into something it's really big and not. So I think it's odd, like when you really start like looking into occult, like the various philosophies and idea, how many like crosses, like how many things are like crossed and merged with each other. Okay. Way back when people were illiterate, the most people were illiterate. It was actually the priests who practiced magic. And, before any Catholic person wants to go lose their mind, there's actually proof of this carved into walls of British churches, that were Catholic churches. And it would make sense because the only dudes out there reading Latin are the priests. So, I don't know why you'd make such a big proof trying to fight that. It was just fact.
Right.
But that was called prayers.
Like how
not
they
spells.
really like through a large period of time, they practiced ceremonial magic, and they kind of believed it was up there. They're like intellectuals, and you're talking about people like John Dee, who was Elizabeth the First, like astrologer, and these kind of people. And then you had like the cunning women that were the village wise women or the village like midwives, and they healed with herbs and so forth. And I've never seen it really addressed in history, but I really think that's where like the idea of a high magic and a low magic had to come from. And really like herbalism and, sympathetic magic like that, like you do with Wicca or witchcraft for the most part, is quote low magic. They still, it's not used as much as it was when I first began to learn about it. But, people that are ceremonial magicians and stuff will still sometimes refer to it as high magic. And it is if you ever like try to read the stuff, it's like just have some migraine medication right there. Because I don't know if these dudes all around the board were intentionally obstinate with their information, just being bizarre and not making sense, which, L. Ron Hubbard could have learned that from them. Or if they really were living on like mentally on some plane that was just way out
or
there,
a combination
because
of everything.
Like, it's like if you're a layperson and you pick up like a graduate level textbook on theoretical physics, I mean, that's what you feel like when you start reading this stuff. Like, and I actually understand theoretical physics, and a lot of it is just so complicated, and but when you look at like how it kind of got passed down through time because of the illiteracy of the general populace, and the only people really being literate being, royalty and nobility and wealthy people and priests, I think you can kind of see how that like begins to, they just always want to seem smarter than everyone else. And what else would make you seem smarter but than to write stuff that nobody understands?
Yeah. And if you're smarter than the other people, you can tell them make them believe what you want them to believe.
Megan, if you read those books I mentioned, you'll start to see some of that play out too.
Which books?
It's just a historical fiction series by Bernard Cornwell, The Last Kingdom.
Oh, yeah. I love all his books.
Fantastic books.
Yes, they are. I haven't read any of these Sharps books yet.
My dad read all of them and loved them. And so,
I figure the rest of the books are really good. So, and I did like the Last Kingdom books.
I like
everybody all angry because like the pagan, you have the pagan protecting you. That'd be good. That made God so angry.
Which is why he never got what he deserved. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, he
but
did at the end.
Yeah. There's just some really good stuff that we don't hear about in the way we're all raised. Right.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You have to go look for it yourself, I think, for most people.
One of the things I loved about that was when you talk about like the magic within priests and some of the stuff that they did, because he does talk about similar stuff in those books, but also like if we have so-and-so's body, if we have the bone of so-and-so or the feather of the dove that was at the burial site when Jesus walked out, or all of these tokens, that was what they would see as God's on our side to win the battle. Whereas on the, Vikings or Norseman side, it was, here's the omens that we see that Thor and Odin are on our side to win the battle.
I feel it's the same thing. It's just coming from a quote unquote different source.
Well, it's the same way that, in the New Testament, when a Christian does it, or when it has to do with Christianity, it's a miracle. But let's be honest, it's magic. And a lot of it's sympathetic magic. I mean, when you have anything that's representing something else, that's sympathetic magic.
Yeah.
I think it's easier for people. Like, I do know that Wicca is the fastest growing religion in Britain.
Really?
Interesting. And I think that kind of makes sense in a way, because if you're actually living or spending a lot of time, I went to the University in North Wales for a while to study Arthurian literature and history.
Oh my goodness.
Cool.
I think when you're there, or especially if you grow up there, and you're kind of going to more quickly than you would someplace like the United States or Canada, you're going to cross between, like, if you want to learn about your ancestors there and you're going to Newgrange, you're going to Stonehenge, or you're going to, one of these many, many places, prehistoric places where, it has to do with like the sun rising and setting on this solstice or on this day, and that being thought of as a holiday. you're very quickly going to cross paths with neo-paganism long before you would learning about that stuff when you're in America, because we don't have any of that stuff here. And to be honest, I agree with the Native Americans when they feel like white people adopting their religions is cultural appropriation. Because, they killed us and wouldn't let us have our religion for so long. And now you want
Now they want it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I totally understand. But so I can see why it would be growing faster there than other places, just because you so quickly run into that intersection of the belief and the physical representations of that belief. That's where the bodies are, and literally in the bogs. So, so that they can tell we're sacrificed, and it's interesting. But yeah, I know that it's growing fairly quickly at a pretty good clip in America too, and in North America. Sure. That the amount of lobbying and so forth that had to be done to, say if you were a soldier, died in a conflict, they wouldn't put a pinnacle on the people's tombstones for a long time. And then Selena Fox with a couple of guys that were Wiccan widows.
That's alliteration.
But yeah, they were able to change that so that Wiccan is a recognized religion in the armed services, and I think in the prisons too. Which I don't know about that, but okay. But I think already in England they already had like the Pagan Policemen Association working with the Met, and they're definitely ahead of us, which would make sense because Gardner was spouting out his stuff with, Doreen Valente and all these other people that I can't think of off the top of my head. It really Wiccanism didn't become a thing here until the 60s, when lots of other cool things happened too. So, and lots of crappy things.
Yeah. Yeah. So but people were opening their minds a little bit more back then.
Whether naturally or with, help from substances.
Some medicinal.
Their minds were opening.
Yeah. It was easier to commune with the spirits.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. So you had mentioned that, when you were in Flagstaff, you worked in, did you say you worked in the shop?
I did. I worked at Crystal Magic for a few years.
Can you tell us about some of the experiences that you had in that shop? And
well, you heard some of my ones about the dorms.
Yes, we did that 2 episodes ago. We talked about the dorm stuff.
About that.
Which are, I guess I didn't realize it was, I knew that they had a reputation of being haunted, but until I saw the articles in the alumni magazine, I was like, this could be like them repeating our stories. It's so weird that like the same things have been happening for so long. It's a bunch of people that don't know each other. I don't know anybody that moved into the dorms 3 years after I was gone.
Right.
Yeah, Flagstaff's an interesting place. I'll have to admit, I haven't been there for like a decade, and I don't remember all the negativity that was like going on spiritually. Like, I would hear people like, talk about the shop being haunted. But there were a couple girls I worked with that were pretty sensitive, and they still didn't really have any negative experiences. So that's why I was really surprised that they called in the dead files. That was really surprising to me because I don't know, maybe like with all the crystals and stuff stored in the basement, they haven't been cleansing them enough in a while. I don't know. Because we never had that big a problem. But I will tell you one thing that happened to me that was so bizarre and slightly annoying and possibly dangerous.
Oh,
I was
good
actually like
lead-in.
the stairs from the basement, like the basement in Crystal Magic, like you're going to feel like you're going through time travel. The floor is like gravel and dirt. The walls are stone, like old school. Nobody's fixed up this basement since the building was built in like the 18 whatever. And so the stairs are just like these rudimentary, like, it's almost like 2x4s, just kind of nailed together wood going up. So, they have openings around them. And somebody called to ask me a question. So I stopped while I was on the stairs. And like, I can't remember if I had to turn around or somebody was standing up in front of me asking me the question. But for whatever reason, all I really remember is I had to stop on the stairs. And it was the last time I ever did because I had on a pair of tree torn tennis shoes.
I remember those.
I went to take a step up and somebody had tied my shoelaces together.
Oh my
God. There was nobody that could have done it.
Yeah.
I didn't feel anything. And I seriously don't even know if a person could have accomplished that fast.
Not that fast.
Not to mention that there's no way anybody's sneaking around in the gravel floor of that basement without you hearing.
You said it was on the stairs. Did the stairs have the slats that?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's what they were nothing but like that wood. So somebody could have reached through like really easy.
Well, someone did reach through.
We just don't know if it was human.
But I mean, that's what I mean. Like those possibly dangerous, but then, there is supposed to be a little girl that's around there. And so, but when she was kind of going through everything going on in the store and all this negative stuff, I was really surprised. Because, it was in general, all right, this doesn't really apply to like management or anything, but it was a positive place to work as far as like,
Sure.
I mean, I guess if you stop cleansing the crystals and stuff, you could easily have a problem. I really doubt there was any way of hiding what the store being a metaphysical shop either. Like, I can't imagine like you would have had to have like spray painted the whole place black. Matt would have for Amy not to see all the stuff that's in there.
Yeah.
To go along with that, Lisha, do you, like in your own experiences with anything else, do you often have, like, my experiences that I've had with something else have always been positive, except for one that I remember that I felt really creeped out by. But could it be potentially, I'm just curious if people experience things a little bit differently, like we all experience our own paths of life differently.
I have to say that, like, one of the best examples I have is this one girl that I was friends with there was very sensitive. And my favorite city in Arizona is Jerome. Okay. But obviously, Old West mining town, lots of people died. There were prostitutes, that kind of thing. But, I've always kind of been able to put the negative of it aside and like, it makes me happy. But she worked with me at Crystal Magic, and she wasn't able to go to Jerome because all she felt was negative.
Yeah, sure.
And she didn't have negative experiences at Crystal Magic. There were times she felt a little bit freaked out, but I mean, she would work down in the basement by herself with no issues. So I guess that's why I do take it pretty seriously that it seems to have changed to something more negative.
Yeah.
And that's,
do you think that's based on the people that are there?
Flagstaff has a really weird energy because it's a place where a lot of transients go. So, like, you meet very few people that are actually from Flagstaff, living in Flagstaff. And in the summer, I think every homeless person in the desert comes up there to stay. So it's always had like this weird energy that I always felt like downtown Prescott has like this awesome energy. And I think like Prescott has more haunted places than Flagstaff, which like when it's history, it's not really that surprising. But Prescott itself, like the city, it just doesn't have that strange vibe that the city of Flagstaff does. And I've always said that
I've heard that
if you reverse them and you have the city that is Prescott, where Flagstaff is, in those mountains and stuff, the place would be perfect, you know, because I was there because I love the mountains and the trees and the forests. And I hated the desert. So I made it like one semester at Arizona State and it hit like 104. And it's like, I'm out.
Yeah.
Hey, that sounds like later this week, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be like that tomorrow, I think.
It's horrible. And so it's a weird energy, but so, I mean, you would hear about like a negative experience here or there in Flagstaff, but I mean, not to the degree that Amy and them were coming across it, and like people that were the witnesses, you know? I mean, I know one of the houses I lived in Flagstaff was haunted. It was more the ground than the house. But I've always kind of had like this no nonsense attitude where it's like, if you're going to like annoy me, I'm going to make you leave.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I've never really had a lot of problems. I think the scariest thing that ever happened to me was in Ohio, actually. So this girl I grew up with, her stepmother, her family owned this huge like maple farm that had a cornfield and obviously maple, lots of trees. And she had told Ruth Ann and I about like she was out playing with her brothers and sisters and cousins or something. They saw something kind of white flitting through the trees and something grabbed her arm and she literally has like scars that are like 4 fingers and a thumb.
Oh,
like
geez.
where you could see it went into her arm deep.
And it scarred her?
So Ruth Ann and I go there to visit her parents with her.
Wow.
And like really funky, like something made me wake up at night, like, and we were in this like upstairs, it's this old farmhouse. And I looked out the window and like, you know, you could just kind of see like this movement of things in the cornfield. And
wow.
Yeah, it was a creepy
That's
place. But, you know,
scary,
there was so much like, you know, Native American history in that area that they were at and negative things that happen that way, you know. I mean, you have to love it. Like, actually, Dead Files, it's the first place I've ever heard anybody really mentioned that Columbus, Ohio's kind of nefarious history. When they did the one that was like the Judge Tavern or whatever it was, I'm not sure how, I don't remember if they went very deep into it. But when they were initially building the first courthouse in Columbus, Ohio, and the first state capitol, and that's the same material that this bar and stuff that
I remember that episode.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. They made, it's like, instead they would just come across, there were all these Native American burial mounds.
Yeah.
And they just flatten them all out, grind the bones up in them, and use them to make the bricks.
I hate
and then
it.
You wonder why,
and then they wonder why their spirits are sticking around.
How many of the mummies from Egypt and other areas were ground and used as some form of medicinal purposes?
Isn't that disgusting?
It's just so disrespectful.
Horrifying.
Yeah,
like how in what world could somebody ever think it's okay to take somebody's remains and
I can't figure
just
that out either.
Destroy them. Would you want that done? I mean, I want to be turned into a tree.
And you think about the sheer history lost, American history lost because of that type of attitude.
Right.
And that just puts an even more depressing aspect on it.
But
yeah, I think that I'd be a pretty negative haunting.
Yeah.
You know, if that was me.
For sure. I don't blame them.
No.
And I don't think I'd be a nice one anyway, because I love to see people scared. It makes me laugh. So I always hope that I get to be a ghost.
Please don't do that to me, because I don't like to be scared.
You don't want to
like we all make fun of Ghost Adventures, but it's like, I think the first 5 or 8 years that Ghost Adventures was on, it was kind of entertaining to watch because they would get so scared. And I found that so funny.
Yeah.
They also did a lot more history.
Yeah.
My issue with
everything
it is how
wasn't a demon.
my
I don't think
issue
there's
with it
even
is
this
how
many demons in hell.
I know. And I think most people, my
good
issue is
TV.
just how they treat the spirits and just how disrespectful they are to them.
Yeah.
Like, that's the main issue I have with the show.
Yeah.
Be as, flamboyant and whatever as you want, but don't like attack the spirits that way. That's not okay.
No.
That's what ticks me off
and I
about
think
him.
they kind of nowadays and for a while they've used like the whole like it's a demon or negative spirit as a justification for that kind of
or being a dick to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
If everything's a demon, then nothing's a demon. Like, you can't. What is every demon in the world just following you around?
Well,
it's like people when they say like they were possessed by the devil,
right?
And I'm like, really? There's like 7 billion people on Earth, and we really think Satan would have nothing better to do but to possess that little girl down the street.
Yeah.
Just don't see that happening.
Yeah.
Well, I actually have to pop off because I have to put my car seat in my car before it gets dark out because the squirrels destroyed my other car.
Right.
So, Lisha, it was so nice talking to you. And again, I just really want to thank you for taking the time to educate me about Wicca because it's something that is really interesting to me, and to get the knowledge from someone who's practicing, I think is very worthwhile. And
you're welcome.
It makes it a lot.
If you have questions, don't hesitate to ask, or if there's book, you want a good idea for like a book. You have to be a little more specific than just a book, but yeah.
You gave me a lot of good ones. There was one, I think Ellen
Jugan.
Yeah, I'm looking into her and trying to find some by her.
Her fiction, like
yes, I was looking up her name and I'm like, these are all fiction. Like she was like
she
5
wrote
series.
the nonfiction. She wrote the nonfiction books, which were published by Llewellyn in Minnesota, a Minnesota company. She wrote those, and then she started writing the fiction. And I hadn't read any of the fiction. And then I had like Kindle Unlimited, and I started reading them. I'm like, these are so entertaining and fun.
Oh, they're good? Okay.
Yeah, they're fun. They're just an easy read. Okay. And I think that's one thing I really like about her books too, is it's like she relays information to you, but she keeps stuff pretty light. And it's easy to read and it's enjoyable.
That's
it's like
good.
some stuff you read it and it just gets so like
bogged down and
like you don't need to be there yet. You know, it's like I think you just want a better idea of like what's going on, and like she the little spells and stuff that she gives in her books they're good too, because they're not really something that and you could have a negative response from, So if you wanted to try, getting a better parking space, I can't remember everything off the top of my head, but, just a lot of things that are simpler. She has a book that's practical protection magic too. A book about cats and cat magic. And
yay. And now that's the book
and then
I
if
need.
you like to garden, or, she has garden witchery, natural witchery, cottage witchery. I think she renamed the one book I have that's like the different days of the week. So it's kind of like you're learning this stuff, like the only thing I know about astrology really is like what days of the week correspond with what magic. Like I think people always assume like you're going to be like really in depth in astrology, and it's like, no. I know.
Well, there's so many things out there. You can't be an expert on every piece of it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you pick the things that are the most interesting to you, and you learn about those the most.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
There you go. There you go.
I felt like I had enough charts and stuff in high school and college that I think astrology never completely interested me that way. It's always interesting when somebody else gives you the information, and then you can look it up. But
yeah.
All right. Well, we probably should wrap up, but
sorry.
this was a lot of fun, and
Yes.
I know we have other things that we would love to talk to you about, so we'll just have to have you on again.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll have to watch that Flagstaff episode again.
It was good.
And maybe make notes or something to kind of like, I've been to every single place they've been to. And I remember there was a couple that I was really shocked they were even there.
Mhm.
I was like, I don't ever remember hearing that place was haunted. That's so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I always, I'm jaded, so I always think that if it's a business, that they just wanted attention.
They want
for
more
their business.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Might be true, might not be. I don't know. But
yeah, I think there's discussions we could have about like the owner of Crystal Magic. And it's funny because his daughter being the manager now, I remember
Right,
she
I
was a
gotta
little
go.
girl when I worked there. So that was really
Okay.
weird.
oh
too.
yeah.
Like,
Okay.
oh my God, all grown up.
Yeah.
Strange.
Wow.
So yeah. But there was and I wanted to know, have any of you guys ever seen, there's an episode of the Dead Files. I remember that the people like really frustrated me because they were
a lot of them.
super,
Oh, that
super,
one?
like, yeah. But they were super, super religious.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember that basically it came around like, well, why would our daughter be thinking that it's a demon and this and that? It's like, because that's all she hears about from you people.
Because that's what you've taught her. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And I can't
I remember there being
what-
at least one of those. Yeah. Where I was like, well, of course she's possessed by the devil. That's what you've taught her. Is
yeah,
gonna
I
happen.
just like,
You notice
but
people
they
that are
were
not
really-
religious
they
are
really
never
seem to
possessed
think
by
that,
the
like,
devil.
I don't know how you think you could have your kids sit through like, I don't know if they're Southern Baptist or something, but basically I think they were also the kind of religion where they didn't really believe in ghosts. They believe it's all demonic.
Oh.
And I need to find that.
I don't remember which one
because it's
specifically.
so bizarre. And it's just like,
yeah,
so frustrating.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I can't. It's gonna bug me if I don't go through those and try to figure out which one it is.
Yeah.
So,
Well.
but,
all right. Well, thank you so much. This
Yeah,
has
thanks,
been
Lisha. It
great.
was so nice to meet you.
thank you. It's fun
just
talking
glad
to you,
finally
ladies.
meet
It's
you in
fun
person.
listening to you too. So everybody should get
Oh.
Patreon because
Thank you.
you guys actually do a lot more on your Patreon than like other. Like the only other Patreon I really belong to is Occult Confessions, and it's like I kind of view them as like PBS. I know that since I can afford it, I should chip in a little bit to keep them on the air.
You do what you can.
Because they don't accept like any type of advertising or anything. I feel like they're like the PBS of occultism.
Yes.
I don't know how they'd feel about me, but they're great.
Yeah.
They're hysterical too, which is good. But the knowledge is really awesome. It's a good podcast to listen to, I think.
Is that the one that you told me about before? And I did a post. We talked about them on our
think
Patreon.
So.
Yeah,
I think so. And then, that and the other podcast is Uncanny. They don't have it's through the BBC, like the BBC4.
Yep.
And Danny Robbins and like Uncanny and all his little offshoots of Uncanny, those are really good if you like ghost stories and stuff like that.
I did listen to a
really
couple of Uncanny episodes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve,
those are fun.
Steve from Haunted UK, he has like a friendly rivalry with Uncanny because every time he puts out an episode that he's been working on for 3 months or whatever, they put out an episode on the same thing on this like the same week. So like they're really in tune.
That's funny.
And so he's like, God damn it, they're doing an episode on this week too. So I'm like, well, then I guess I have to listen to it. So I did listen to 1 or 2 episodes of Uncanny. It was good. Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, it's fun. And then I just like British ghost stories.
Yeah.
I think I know too much about American stuff, or I don't know what it is.
Yeah. Well, the
It's
British
almost
ones,
like
the stories are
the
so much
motherland
bolder.
of like hauntings or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
A
Do
lot
you-
of shit
do you
was
listen
down there,
to-
so.
Do you listen to Generally Spooky?
Aren't they Scottish, right?
Yeah. They're Scottish.
Yeah, than I have. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're awesome.
They're good. They're really fun.
Alien and Kieran.
Yep. Alien.
Yeah, like I'll go to listen to like an English history podcast, and I shouldn't be like, so, I know enough that I could do an English history podcast, but I'm American. So I shouldn't be like so against like the person being American doing the podcast. But for some reason, it's like every time when it is, I'm like, oh, I thought this was English.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see that.
So stupid. Weird, but yeah.
No, I get it.
Well, you guys all have a good evening.
Thank you.
You
You
as
too.
well.
Thanks
Thank
so much
you.
for joining us. And we will talk to you soon.
Figure out which episode of the Dead Files that is. I'll let you know. So
Yeah,
you guys
send it along.
is like annoyed as me.
Well, maybe it's one we'll recap at some
Yeah,
point.
we can recap it if we haven't already, and even if we have, we can recap it with Amy, because I don't think we've done any old ones.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you haven't.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, let us know what it is.
I think I remember all. Yeah, I remember pretty much all the episodes you guys have done. And this one's always kind of sitting in the
I don't
back
even
of my
remember
mind.
all the
But,
episodes.
the one where they're like in Virginia with the slave house and stuff, like,
Oh,
was
Yeah.
in front of this one in my mind of like,
okay. Yeah, see if you can find it. If you want it, we can, instead of doing, we have a couple more, I think, to do before the show comes back on.
Mhm.
So we can do at least one recap or something.
so,
before we
okay.
talk.
Is it just a split season, or are they going to come back?
We
with
have
the
no
same
idea.
They
season?
keep changing their minds, and they keep, what's the word? I can't think of the word. They keep contradicting themselves and each other. Like Cindy said it was a brand new season. A guy who's a producer on the show said it's not a brand new season. It's going to be season
It's a
15.
continuation.
It's just picked up. And then they release it and say it's going to be a new season, brand new season starting on September. So
I'll go.
they don't know
I'll go
what's
see if
going
I can flip through my cable channels and see.
Oh, yeah.
Because I DVR it, so I'll see if it comes
Right.
up as season 15 or 16.
on. Okay. I'm going to guess
Yeah,
it's going
that's
to be
weird.
16 because they want to make it sound like it lasted another year than it did.
Yeah.
I don't think there's going to be
Well,
another
it's not
season
like
after
Cindy hasn't done a plethora of shows you can
I know.
always talk about just in case.
this. Right. Well, there's tons of shows we can talk about.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It happens. Okay, we're doing the Minnesota goodbye here. We've said this like 8 times. Okay. We're really okay. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll have you on again soon. We'll do happy hour soon.
Yes. Absolutely.
Have a great
Okay,
evening.
And it was nice meeting you guys finally.
Nice
too.
meeting you as
You
well.
too.
Thanks for your
Bye.
support.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
And next week, we'll be doing more spooky stories or maybe have a guest. And nonetheless, we're gearing up for the new season of The Dead Files. And we're going to find out, is it truly a new season? Or is it just an extension of the previous season?
We don't know. I don't think they know.
Mm-mm.
I think they're playing it fast and loose, just like we are for this hiatus section that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next time. We're not really sure what we're doing, but send us your stories. We will always be doing listener stories, even if they're just offshoots that we do on Patreon or whatever. Come join us on Patreon. You can join for free. And
We're a
we
hoot.
will, yeah, we are. If you didn't already know that. All right. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Later.
Thank you for listening to the Activity Continues podcast. We really appreciate you giving us your ears for a bit. Please reach out if you have a suggestion for which episode of The Dead Files we should cover next, or if you have a spooky story you'd like us to share on the show. We can be reached at theactivitycontinues@gmail.com or through our website or any of our socials. Links are all in the description of the show. Please feel free to drop us a note and say hi. And join us next time when the activity continues. The Activity Continues is produced by me, Amy, at Collected Sounds Media, and is part of the independent Collected Sounds podcast network. We are also proud members of the Boo Pod network of super cool podcasts.
Nailed it.